Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, of all the football games I've watched, that was definitely one of them.
Kevin Noon also with us here. Kevin, how are you doing?
I just witnessed football. It was something, and it's the first time in a while that I've had to go and look up the name of an official because I was very curious as to who couldn't figure out how to call holding. But I digress. Ohio State won, and the best thing about being 7-1 is what, fellas?
The opportunity to go 8-1.
There you go.
The first question coming in from Robert Fincher, and I think this is the one we really have to dive into. Help me to understand. ... Question mark. Question mark. Question mark. Question mark. I think this was exactly, Ryan Day said you can't go into games with expectations. I think he kind of went in expecting something like this. This is what he had talked about, where it was going to be a dogfight. And it was going to come down to the fourth quarter. But obviously none of us expected it to be like this. And this was somewhat reminiscent of the Oregon game where Ohio State just couldn't punch it in the red zone. And instead of going for it on fourth down every time, Ryan Day kicked some field goals here. I did think when he went for it on fourth down, I do think that was the right call.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, yeah, sure, they probably would have liked that field goal at that point and wouldn't have had to kick this last one. But I didn't really have a problem with him going for it then. But yeah, credit Penn State's defense. And also, Tom, I think Sean Clifford was pretty healthy. This was as good as we've seen him since, was it 2017, 2018 when he was like, looked like he was going to be something. And he looked pretty good in this one.
He looked better than he looked earlier in the year, which, earlier in the week, James Franklin said he was 100%. It was like, he may have been a medically assisted 100% tonight, but, he looked like a completely different quarterback than he did a week ago against Illinois. And that's not just Ohio State played bad defense. Clifford was very clearly more healthy, more comfortable, whatever you want to attribute that to. He was willing to run tonight, which is a big part of his game. He was comfortable throwing the ball. He had a lot of guys open. Ohio State had no problem stopping the Penn State running attack. It was like, the Penn State's running RPOs, and it's like there was no R. There was no R at any point tonight for Penn State. It was just like, that's just all you have to do is worry about the P, and Ohio State just constantly struggled to get off the field on third down. On the other side of the ball, the offensive line was like, whew, that was, earlier in the week or last week that Ryan Day, was asked about the offensive line recruiting, and it was basically like, well, as long as the product on the field is good, it's not, that's what really matters. It's like, well, how is everyone feeling about the product on the field tonight on the offensive line? Because it did not look outstanding from where I was sitting.
I think this is a pretty decent wake-up call as well, if they needed it. You saw a lot of frustration on the offensive line. Thayer Munford there at the end. They just out of sync. I don't know what was going on with the snap counts and the snapping. At one point there was, they finished with 10 penalties.
A couple of snap infractions.
Three snap infractions, I believe. Yeah.
Some false starts. And it was not a great day for the offensive line, even aside from the run blocking. Just not it looked like they were the offensive line that was playing on the road rather than Penn State. But we're going to be all over the place here for right now. But third downs, Penn State 11 of 18. And really that's what kept them in this game, I think. Mm-hmm. Even aside from Ohio State's difficulties in the red zone, Penn State 4.9 yards per play. They were fluctuating between like 4.7 and 4.9. And really, if you are a defense and over the course of a season, you hold somebody to 4.8, 4.9 yards per play, that's going to be around 25th in the nation. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. They just couldn't get off the field on third down. And so if you average 4.9 yards per play and you can pick up that third down, you can continue to keep the ball. And so, like, I'm not going to get too hung up on the Ohio State defense here, but the RPO situation is going to continue to be an issue, and it really looked like the defense of old, and maybe that's because, again, they were playing a more competent quarterback than they have in the past. I do, Tom, also want to say, when Steel Chambers was on the field, Ohio State gave up 3 points. When he was not on the field, Ohio State gave up 21 points. Now, that's an entire second half, but that made a difference.
Yeah, the more you watch Steel Chambers, the more it's like, why is anyone else playing right now? Like, I know, maybe you're pulling a captain off the field, and maybe that has some off, locker room kind of considerations or whatever. But like, I know Steel Chambers can't play the first half against Nebraska now because of the targeting call. But like, once he comes back, I don't know that I'd be taking him off the field all that much, because he seems like he's a difference maker in a way that other guys in that room just don't look like difference makers right now. Steel Chambers is going to make mistakes. Unquestionably, that's just a function of, hey, he's a guy who's still relatively new at the position. So yeah, you're still learning. I get it. Like, totally get it. No problem. But he makes positive differences in ways that other guys in that room just aren't right now. It's just like there are other guys who are just kind of there. Steel Chambers is a guy who, like, when he's on the field, you notice him because a lot of times he's doing stuff, and he, made a couple plays. There were a couple times when he looked like he was coming up that A gap pretty hard a couple times, I think. And I believe he was one of the people that, when people had thoughts on holding calls or non-holding calls, including Fowler and Herbstreit, this was not just angry message board takes. This was the TV crew going, he was at the middle of some of those. So, I absolutely do not want to overstate the role of holding calls or non-holding calls or whatever. Like, Ohio State had a whole bunch of issues tonight that a couple calls that don't get made in every single game in the history of college football were not what caused Ohio State issues tonight. They had a whole bunch of other issues.
Yeah, and I just saw a mention of C.J. Stroud. Like, Ohio State scored 2 offensive touchdowns in this one. They had 6 total scoring drives if you count the 4 field goals. But C.J. Stroud was 22 of 34, 305 yards passing, 65% completion percentage, 1 touchdown. To me, Kevin, like, that's perfectly fine. That's more than fine. It wasn't his issue. Now, he did, the poor guy had the wide open Chris Olave thing after having to run 80 yards for no reason, and then obviously jog 80 yards back. And people are like, he's 19, he should be able to run 80 yards. It's like, yeah, but you have to come back as well. And then you could see him like visibly just huffing and puffing. And then, I'm not saying that's the reason why he threw an incompletion there on an easy throw, but I bet it didn't help.
No, it didn't help. I mean, it was this game was full of dumb stuff. It just dumb. I've seen a lot of dumb stuff today, and this game was really dumb. And the fact that ball rolled around on the ground, longer than the old lady in the Medic Alert commercial who'd fallen and couldn't get up. And then they sat there and Lucetta ran it 80 yards, and Stroud, thank goodness he ran after him because, we don't want to stop a play too soon. So they let it go, and they're like, oh, well, it was incomplete. Was this Urban Meyer not taking a timeout at Penn State before getting the field goal blocked? No. But, I think that this could have been handled a little bit better. I think that you get a little bit into the weeds, you get a little too focused on what's going on, and you kind of lose sight of everything. And I think he kind of lost sight of everything there. But, yeah, I mean, I heard the television announcer saying, oh, well, he thought that maybe Olave was going to sit down in his route. Well, as we like to say around here, I don't know if that was the case, but, I mean, just weird, just really weird. I mean, maybe there was a scarlet full moon out there tonight. I don't know, because just a lot of things that I'm not accustomed to seeing from this team.
Just a couple of things. Ryan Galasso, no Cam Martinez. Was he not active for the game? I did see him out there a couple of times. Seen some mentions of Tyrik Williams. I did not see him, and he did not record any defensive statistics. I don't know. Did either of you guys see him out there? I did. I know Antoine Jackson.
I saw Antoine Jackson out there, but I didn't see. I don't remember Tyrik.
He played really well. Obviously, Jerron
And yeah,
Keach. I don't know
Jerron
if you
Keach,
guys saw him score that touchdown. You may have missed that. You may have gone to the bathroom for a break and then come back and maybe just missed him going into the end zone. But yeah, I didn't. I don't know that I actually saw Tyreek Williams. And to me, if he plays, I'm going to see him. So I don't know how many snaps he got, if he got any. No. And
we had a couple of questions on the Ask the Insiders board that I wanted to get to real quick before we get too deep into the YouTube questions. Kansas City Buckeye says, thoughts on Chambers' personal foul and targeting. Was either one legit? And the personal foul got kind of replaced with the targeting call because it wasn't really that wasn't two separate penalties. They kind of made a separate call. I mean, as far as targeting calls go, that was I didn't have a huge issue with that one. Do either of you guys have a problem with that targeting call?
I mean, it was a helmet to the face, man. I mean, it wasn't vicious, but I've seen softer ones than that, but it was pretty soft. What'd you think? I mean, I agree with it, but it was a soft version of it.
I didn't like it, but I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was somewhat of a proper call on a poorly written rule. I did not like the late hit at all. I did not like that whatsoever. I thought that was a terrible call. That was I don't even know, the center judge, I guess is what they call that position now. The same official that missed holding after holding after holding after holding, and then they find their flag at that point. It was all kind of a moot point because I think targeting would have been buzzed down from up top anyway, and I think it still probably would have gone through. Again, I don't like the call. There's no football in my football, but the way it's written, yeah, I guess it was, but I still don't like it.
And that's one where if you have the targeting and then like super targeting or malicious targeting or whatever, intent to target, or if they had rewritten the rule where it was like a variation of the old 5-yard and 15-yard face mask, that would have been the non-malicious, non-violent whatever. But it would it is as the rules written that was targeting. I didn't have a big problem with that call. The other question that we got on the board was from Rob Cron. Is it the case that TreVeyon Henderson has never really needed to grind out yards? He thought it was odd for Henderson to not work for first downs, coming up 1 to 2 yards short a few times on first and second downs. Is that something you guys noticed or not really?
Well, they were just kept plowing into the middle of the line, and there I don't know, there was a lot of room there, and you almost don't want to see him reaching out, but. I think he got stronger and tougher in the second half, and I'm guessing he got talked to as well about, you need to fight for that stuff. And Ryan Day talked about it before the game earlier in the week. You got to turn 2 and 3 yard runs into 5-yard runs, and I think he did that. He wasn't doing it in the first half, and I don't know how much room there was actually to do that. But in the second half, I didn't jot down the first half stats, but I think he may have had like 11 yards rushing or so, probably finished with 140 yards rushing in the second half. And this guy is already he's been averaging in the third quarter. And did his long run came in the third quarter, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
But in terms of, let me look real quick for his numbers here and find his split stats. Because in the third quarter this year, coming into today, he's averaging 14 yards a carry, 21 carries for 297 yards in the 3 games that he has played in the third quarter this year, to tell you how little second half work he has gotten. But you're only going to keep him down for so long, and that's why he's a difference maker. But I do think he probably got some talking to, not from just a coach, but teammates, and like, this is going to be we're putting this game on your back, and we need you to get every last yard because you're seeing how tough it is out there. And I think this was his official welcome to Big Ten football and college football, really.
Yeah, I mean, this was you're not playing Rutgers, you're not playing Tulsa, you're not this was a real big boy football game against a team with a good defense. And Penn State's defensive line, I think we came in expecting not to be that great. I think we thought that the strength of the defense was going to be that back seven. And then the defensive line looked pretty darn good for most of the game. And you can chalk that up to whatever mix of Ohio State offensive line and Penn State defensive line you see fit in your heart. But it was, that he had to work for it. He had to earn it. And, that's what you want to see from a running back is get stronger as the game goes on. And, the offensive line can potentially wear down the opposing defensive line a little bit and the holes get a little bigger and, or go from non-existent to somewhat existent. And then you see the big plays in the second half. And that run was Ohio State had to have that run from TreVeyon Henderson when they got that run from TreVeyon Henderson. That was a big, big, big play for them. And, again, this is a true freshman. We have all heard the story of Eddie George fumbling 3 times against Illinois as a true freshman because you can't rely on true freshmen. Well, Ohio State on a night where the offensive line wasn't great and they just had a bunch of wonky penalties and the defense couldn't get off the field to save their lives, had to rely on a true freshman running back, and they got exactly what they wanted out of him and exactly what they needed out of him in that second half. And that to me is impressive, even if the whole, you're not giving Ohio State an A+ for this game in probably any area, but you'd have to feel decent about how TreVeyon Henderson looked given what he had to work with tonight.
I do wonder the continuous running up the middle that we came into this game saying Penn State has a soft middle. We saw that from Illinois, and I wonder if Day was like, I know it's there. I swear, I've heard it's there. And it just didn't happen. But eventually you just keep doing something. TreVeyon Henderson will find it. And he finished with 28 carries for 152 yards, a long of 68, average of 5.4 yards per carry. He scored another touchdown. And one of the best players in the nation, and you can only contain him for so long. And he's just, he's a guy you can rely on. I saw Kevin was putting up the stuff from Mason Schaff about the pizzas that, Tom is supposed to order for us. We'll probably get them in 3 to 6 hours, but rather it'll be like 22 minutes. And, because the time frames will be way off, and then Tom will forget to check his phone, like always, to say, hey, the pizza has already been delivered.
It was good pizza, though. It was damn good pizza for what it was. For the weirdness that Bloomington was, where we were staying, that pizza that could be delivered in 2 to 604 hours that showed up in 12 minutes was still good pizza. So I'm not going to bag on Tom for that because he found good pizza.
All right, and speaking of not bagging on me, before we get to the super chat, I do want to hit a great one from RC3 Miller. This isn't a question; it's just a statement. This is from our Ask the Insiders board. The 3 of them side by side, if you go left to right, they look like a time progression photo of a man who aged 10 years. Tony, Kevin, back to you.
I'm out.
No, let's go back to
if you're listening to the podcast and you're not watching, I'm on the left. Tony's in the middle. Kevin's on the right. So
I do turn 50 next week. So, I mean, Mother Nature is undefeated. So, I mean.
And I turned 40 and Tom turns 30. This is, I guess it's accurate. Super chat from
let's
Brady
go to the
S.
super chat, damn it.
Would have loved to see more quick slants over the middle tonight. Stroud came in the game a little rattled. First primetime game under his belt, Tom.
Well, and it's not his first primetime game, and the Minnesota game was a primetime game, but this was the first big time atmosphere, and he looked a little nervous off the start, and that's kind of okay, makes sense. Again, as if you're starting quarterback and it's a redshirt freshman, and so I mean this was the first real truly big time atmosphere he's had to play in. So it's okay, that's okay, and he settled down throughout the course of the game. Some of the play calling was just a little weird to me. I mean, the lack of outside runs was, I think, the most bizarre thing. But just it was like they got down to the red zone and it was just oh, we forgot to plan for this. Oh no, and there was no real coherent anything to what they were doing down there. 6 trips to the red zone, and they put the stat up at the end of the game that they were 78% touchdowns. 78% touchdowns, something like that, third in the country coming into the game, and then 1 touchdown and 6 trips. That's like UConn bad. That is a disaster. I mean, and it was 1 touchdown, 4 field goals and lost it on downs. I mean, that's real bad, and that's a concern. And that is partly a function of if your offensive line can't drive the other team off the ball, like that limits your options to run. And if the other team doesn't have to blitz a lot or bring in extra guys to stop the run, then they have more guys to drop back, and you don't have the option to pass anymore. And you've got the back of the end zone working as an extra defender for you, and you're working in a confined space and all that kind of stuff. And CJ Stroud was just a little bit off at times tonight, and all of that added up to 1 for 6, which is, I mean, woof.
Kevin, is it time for Ohio State to look for a 5'9" red zone weapon quarterback, perhaps? Maybe a mobile kid?
I see what you're doing here. No. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the game because I still don't necessarily understand what their decision making was in terms of red zone offense. I mean, we have here, Ohio State technically 5 of 6 in the red zone, but you need to get 7. You don't need to get 3. Congratulations to Noah Ruggles. You may be the most consistent player on the team. What is he, 11 of 11 on field goals now? Perfect on point after tries. But I don't know. I mean, they just kept trying Henderson up the middle. And while they did have a couple of pops, that wasn't necessarily in the red zone. That was much deeper back down on the field. So I think at some point, it's just you keep banging your head against the wall and you have to realize maybe we need to try something else. But it really didn't matter because Ohio State's 10 penalties, all of them happened at really inopportune times. So, no, they don't need to go out and get a gimmick quarterback, certainly. But they do need to figure something out.
I just completely lost my train of thought once I heard the ding come in. The super chat. I lost.
I'll jump in real quick and just say, Noah Ruggles was 4 of 4. His long was 35, and the other ones were 23, 25, and 26. You should, except in extreme circumstances, mathematically not be kicking field goals that start with a 2, except in like really, really specific circumstances. Like the last one was like, okay, it pushes it from a 1-score game to a 2-score game. It's very late. Okay, like I get that one. Like you should not be kicking those field goals if you have the offense that Ohio State has. Now, how much of that was Ryan Day not completely trusting that offense tonight? But he was kicking a lot of field goals. He punted a couple times in plus territory. That was either, you can read that as guy who doesn't completely trust his offense or guy who has a tremendous amount of faith in his defense. And it was just like, if it was the latter, I don't know that tonight was the night to do that. But that has been a little bit of a trend with him where it's real easy to be brave when you're up by 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns. And it's like, we'll go for it on 4th and 3. What the heck? You kids go out there and have fun. This is something where when the game gets a little closer, we saw this against Clemson in that Fiesta Bowl game. He had a couple where he's, was kicking a bunch of field goals in the first half. He punted very late in that game, gave the ball back to Clemson and then they went 95 yards with it to score the winning touchdown. He plays it a little closer to the vest against better competition. And, sometimes you've got to just kind of let it fly. You've got to be a little more aggressive and just trust your offense. Cause this is a good offense. A little more variety in the red zone run game wouldn't have been bad. I mean, I kept waiting for an end around to Garrett Wilson or something. Just do something to stretch the field horizontally. Make them guard you sideline to sideline instead of just between the guards.
It almost seemed like they were getting something from Penn State in the red zone that they weren't expecting. Like they were seeing something that they hadn't planned on. And I don't know how different Penn State's defense was from what they normally do, but they sure seemed cautious and less confident in what they wanted to do. And I guess we kind of saw the result there. Super chat from Terry Kovac. Do you think Stroud hurt us without the threat of the QB run? And I'll touch on this a little bit, and then I'll throw it to Kevin. I don't think this is a decision about CJ Stroud. I think he can run. I think this is more – I actually don't know why Day won't do it, why he won't allow for some of these read options, and it's always just handoffs or RPOs with the run option being the handoff and the pass option obviously being the pass. And they do that a little bit, but – I would like to see him keep the ball a couple of times, and I think everybody would. Kevin, I don't know why Ryan Day doesn't.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea. You know, at one point, you know, he was dealing with the sore shoulder, and you didn't want him to get out there and take any shots or whatever. I was careful not to say whatnot. I don't need hearing aid guy to get on me about my whatnot crutch phrase. There certainly were plays. The one where he came really close to going across the line of scrimmage in terms of the illegal forward pass that didn't end up getting called, where he could have picked up the first down. Now, oftentimes, they're just the opportunities where he'll get right up there and he'll find somebody and pick up 15, 17, 19 more yards, and it's not what he would have been able to run for. But it certainly would seem that the offense, it would be one more thing to prepare for if he had a run threat. And it's not something that he has to run 5, 6, 7 times a game. Run 2, 3 times a game. Just have one design run in there and then have a scramble or two. Stroud can run. We've seen it. We've seen that he is capable of running. Granted, we also saw some national guys say that Dwayne Haskins could run because they remember him coming in at the Michigan game up in Ann Arbor and nearly running in that touchdown. Said, well, he's just a running quarterback. Well, that's what happens when you watch one play of tape. Well, we've seen enough CJ Stroud. We know he can run. We know he's plenty athletic, but for whatever reason, they're just not willing to move forward with it. And I think it's very frustrating, and I think it's limiting. I really think it's limiting, and I'm not one to play Saturday night armchair quarterback on this, but I'm going to play it right now. I want to see the run. I want to see that there because I think that adds yet another wrinkle, and I think it will help Ohio State in those rare instances where there's a defense that it goes against that where it bogs down. I think it's just one more thing, even if it's not something that you rely upon greatly.
I think it will also open up the middle of the defense, which has been an issue when, the couple of times where they've really tried to pound it up the middle. I don't have a problem, Tom, with CJ Stroud throwing the ball on a scramble and just picking up easy yards like that. Because it's free, essentially. And so I don't really have a problem with that. I would just like to see him keep it, he doesn't need to do it more than two times a game. Keep the ball on a read, and then boom, it becomes something that defenses have to focus on more because you just never know. He might pull it out in the fourth quarter or third quarter or second quarter when he's about to be taken out of the game because they're in another blowout or something. But just the threat, and it doesn't have to be much. And this is something we talked about with Dwayne Haskins. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And then finally they start to do it, and they run better. It's a miracle.
Right. And you go back to the 2018 season with Haskins, and it was, the defense is just crashing on the, what we kept referring to as read plays. And it was like, is it really a read or is it just a straight handoff? But, we'll call it a read play. Defenses just kept crashing on the running backs for the read plays. And you get to the third, fourth game of the year against TCU, which was at the time seemed like, wow, this is a huge game. And Haskins keeps it once and just walks into the end zone. And then that opens stuff up more because then at that point, it's a threat. And with Haskins that year, it always seemed like when they needed him to run, he would run. Because I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns against Maryland in that 52-51 game where it's like they really, really, really needed the threat of his legs, and especially in overtime. And they did it then. So I was a little surprised that tonight was one of those games where it was like, okay, once you got a little bit into the game and it was like, okay, this is not going to be as lopsided as maybe we thought and maybe the coaching staff thought. Maybe this is the week, this is the time he pulls one, and, especially if you're struggling in the red zone like that, you pull one and you have the opportunity to maybe punch it in. And it just never happened. And it's not like he can't do it. And it's not like the shoulder has been a huge concern recently. This is not week 2, week 3 of the season where you're constantly worried about the shoulder. So I don't know. It's not like he can't do it. It's just they're choosing not to do it right now, which is kind of weird to me.
It's a weird offensive night overall. Super chat from Jason Fruth. Munford seemed pretty upset on the last fall start. Maybe Penn State was mimicking the cadence, or was everyone dressed up as JB shoe guards for Halloween? That's a good one. We'll give you that one. I appreciate that one. There's just communication issues all night because there was one where everybody false started except for Luke Whippler. There's one where Luke Whippler just kind of knocked the ball back like a cat playing with, a toy. And it's like, that's not actually how you are supposed to snap the football. And fortunately for Ohio State, the refs called just an illegal snap or whatever, rather than I think maybe the fumble that it should have been. So yeah, just Munford. I think Munford was also unhappy with the coaches that they needed to get these things in and let's go. Just stop, maybe like stop being cute. You think the offensive line just wants to get up, get aggressive, and go. And I remember, in past years where the offensive line would get annoyed at having to, do the whole meerkat thing, get set, and then look over, and then they would just want to go. Let's just go, go, go. And when I guess it's probably hard to get a rhythm with what they were doing, and they certainly never got a rhythm, Kevin.
No, they certainly didn't. I mean, I thought there might have been some frustration in terms of that they just weren't snapping it quickly enough at that point. I don't know if that was something that was directed at CJ. I mean, it was very, it was very questionable what was kind of going on at that point. But, you have a team that sits there and has all these various degrees of hurry up and faster than hurry up and then super fast hurry up. And as Tony called it, the meerkat, I mean, you get into that point, and while you don't want to get in there and act haphazardly, I don't know. I just think that they were playing some of their best ball outside of the time that Penn State wasn't set and Stroud couldn't hit Olave. I think when they had Penn State on its heels, when Penn State wasn't set, I mean, obviously that's a bit of an advantage. And for whatever reason, whether it's the play call wasn't in, whether there was some sort of kill on a play out there that was being signaled in, they just couldn't seem to get it all put together. And that's not the stuff that's supposed to be happening at home. You're supposed to have these communication issues on the road. You're supposed to have those types of issues. I mean, probably not at Nebraska, because I don't know if anybody's cheering at Nebraska right now, but maybe at the big house. I mean, you're supposed to be dealing with that, so they better figure out some of this communication before then, because what does that place seat, like 112, and we know like about 35,000 will be Ohio State fans. So I mean, they're still going to have 78,000 Michigan fans there with their pom-poms and their water bottles filled with pennies and whatever the hell else they do up there, trying to make noise for 2 quarters before it gets out of hand.
Shaking their keys.
Yes.
Tom, did you want to add to that, or should we go to the Razzmatazz super chat?
Well, one thing that was, if we're talking about Michigan, you saw how much struggle Michigan had defending the hurry up against Michigan State. I have a feeling you're going to see more hurry up from Ohio State. Now, has Michigan, Michigan has a month to solve that. They've got 4 weeks from tonight to solve that. So, maybe that gets straightened out before then, but you've got to think that's going to be part of Ohio State's game plan. And let's see how solved they have it, because they look lost at times against Michigan State on Saturday. And, Michigan State's got a very good running back, and their skill talent's okay, and Peyton Thorne's okay, and the offensive line, before tonight I would have said is not as good as Ohio State's, but I think Ohio State's probably going to be able to hold up better in the pass protection department. So it seems like Ohio State's offense is set up to succeed against Michigan, especially if they can take advantage of some of that tempo stuff. So that may then negate, if you're going tempo, that may then negate some of the concerns about, the offensive linemen have to stay in their stances for too long as they're changing plays or whatever else.
I just want to mention before we get to Razzmatazz, I have the BYU Virginia game on my television. It is 38-35 BYU with 1:21 remaining in the second quarter.
Oh, I don't need to flip over there yet then.
So this is going to be a fun one. 376 total yards for BYU to like 373 for Virginia. So that should be a fun one in the second half. Razzmatazz, super chat. Thank you very much for that. Who was the MVP of this game? Immediately my mind goes to Travion Henderson, Tom, but then I'm thinking Tyrik Smith caused some havoc. Led to a JT Tuimoloau sack as well. This was he showed up. He had a forced fumble. It had a hurry. He had a sack, 5 tackles, 3 solos, and it was just good to see him out there again. So maybe I go there for a like an indie type of, you go listen to your top 40. I'm going to tell you who's really good. You go ahead and take Travion, who probably is, but
Mhm.
I don't want to steal your thunder there, Tom.
Well, Tyrik Smith and Zach Harrison were two of the people I talked about before the game as people who, this could potentially be a breakout game for them because Penn State's offensive line was not fantastic and they were going to be one-dimensional. And for the most part, both of those things were true. And you did see Tyrik Smith really have an impact tonight for kind of the first time this year. I mean, he's been banged up. You saw him, I think the last time we saw him really 100% healthy was the Clemson game, and he made an impact against Clemson in that Sugar Bowl and then missed the national championship game. And then has just kind of been banged up on and off pretty just all year. And, if you're constantly a game time decision or constantly missing weeks, like that means even the weeks when you are healthy, you're probably not 100%. This was the first time it really felt like Tyrik Smith made an impact during the game. And Zach Harrison, I don't know that Zach Harrison had statistically the same kind of game that Smith had, but he was, two tackles, one quarterback hurry. But again, he was in there as well. There were a couple times when we saw him in there as well, kind of, pressuring Clifford. And that was encouraging to me about the Ohio State defense. There was a lot that was not encouraging tonight for the Buckeyes. To me, the play of the defensive line was pretty encouraging. I think they did some stuff that you had been waiting and waiting and waiting to see, and then you finally actually saw it on Saturday night.
Kevin,
I'll jump in with a name, and it wasn't necessarily, I don't know if I would say MVP, but somebody that kind of came out of left field a little bit for me. That's Marcus Williamson, because 6 tackles, 5 of them were solo. I mean, he was in there in terms of some of the blitzing. I thought he had a really good game. And again, would I sit there and have him, if we were doing hockey in the 3 stars? I don't know if he would be in my 3 stars, but, at risk of sitting there and picking, Trevion Henderson or, somebody that Tom or Tony picks, I want to go off the board a little bit. And I thought that, he forced a fumble. He had a TFL. I mean, whatever they talk about production points, he had some production points. And I thought that he had a good game. And for somebody who came into the year expecting to be this, let me find the camera, this, and really had to earn any playing time because it wasn't there, I think it's a good story.
I see the comment from DK, CJ Stroud, quote, "I choose not to run," unquote. Marcus Williamson was really impactful early on. I liked when basically if he's got nobody to cover, it's just like, well, just go blitz, go attack the ball. You're not going to do us any good standing over here with the trips on the other side or whatever. So I think they're finding ways, and that's why I say, somebody asks, did Cameron Martinez play? And it's like, well, Marcus Williamson continues to play well, and if they're going to play the same position, and I do believe Cameron Martinez was getting some reps at free safety before the game in warm-up, so maybe they're getting more and more comfortable with Marcus Williamson and instead trying to find some help for Bryson Shaw some way or another. Let's go to a super chat from Jeff Hines. Thank you, Jeff. Hi from Honduras. This game put a good scare to us fans and our team. They looked vulnerable again like the Oregon game. Enjoy watching you guys. Thank you for that. I agree. There was some Oregon vibes to this, and it comes down to similar things. The red zone bogging down, having trouble picking up first downs on third down. And I guess this time they weren't so close on their third downs that they had to go for it on fourth downs. They chose to punt instead. But yeah, there were some issues there. What I think the positive that comes out of this is they got tempered a little bit. I think you come out of this game stronger rather than weaker. And if you come out weaker, that's a culture issue. That's a program issue. That's your players have an issue. I don't think they come out that way. I think they come out as realists and see like, yeah, we're not a finished product and there is still work to do. And I think coaches like these kinds of wins because it brings everybody back to earth, Tom.
Yeah, and this is the kind of win that makes it less likely that they have a 2017 Iowa game when they hit the road to go to Nebraska next week. That you're not coming out of this super excited and real self-satisfied and feeling like you're going to conquer the world. You're coming out of this going, a lot of the quotes in post game are just kind of, we know we got to get better. We got to improve on all these different things. Zach Harrison, our next opponent, is looking at this film and looking at all the plays we messed up on. So we got to go back and correct those mistakes because we're going to get attacked next week. I mean, that's kind of the mindset you want. And, that's the kind of thing that keeps you from falling into those trap games that Ohio State has fallen into in the past. Those were generally the week after Ohio State did something that they felt really good about, and then they gave you a whole bunch to feel not so good about. So there's plenty to work on this week. It's a little bit of the week one. The best win is a win that you can learn from. This is a win that the Buckeyes can learn from.
Yeah, seeing a bunch of questions coming in. If you're new here, as always, super chat, get your super chat submission, get your question to the top of the line. But I do want to touch on from Roto COD, the college football nerds guys were mad OSU fans charged the field. I have no idea why fans would charge the field in this game. Yeah, it was a big win in terms of it was a close win. It was a tough game. It was a tough fought win, and there's some relief there. But like Michigan State fans didn't even rush the field, did they? I don't recall. Did they? I don't know.
I don't recall it.
They must have. They must have.
Did they?
They must.
I don't. I think I flipped pretty quick to.
Yeah.
We were getting ready to do pregame.
Yeah.
So
there was a game today.
I probably had already come upstairs into my office to start prepping for that and didn't see it. But yeah, I think that it's dumb to charge the field at this point. I mean, if you want to be able to stomp around on the last year of the turf over there, okay, I guess I get it. But it wasn't a thrilling last second emotional. This is so exciting moment. It was just, hey, we just want to jump around and slap some players on the back or whatever. And I don't know. I think it's kind of dumb. I mean, if this was the SEC, you'd get about a $250,000 fine.
I think if you want to pretend that Penn State is not your rival, then you can't storm the field, or else you've kind of given up the secret that they are your rival. And so that's I don't want to be the codger saying, "Oh, get these dang fans, stop them from storming the field." It's more of a, I don't want them. Why are you storming the field in this game? I'm okay with storming the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Penn State will now drop out of the rankings. They're going to be like ranked 24th in the nation.
Well, and this is not a team that you consider your big rival. This is not a team that you've struggled to beat historically, where it's like, oh, we finally got over the hump against this team. Like, they've beaten this team every year except for one since 2011. So, and it wasn't like this was a dramatic last second win. This wasn't like this didn't clinch anything for Ohio State. Like, yeah, it was. That's a little weird. I am not here to be the fun police, and I am all about like go live your best life. But yeah, that's a little weird. It had not even occurred to me that Ohio State fans might storm the field after that.
Sue, any of you surprised that Miller wasn't subbed in at center after Whippler made several really bad mistakes? Harry Miller was not available in this game. That might be why. That is why you didn't see him. I was wondering if they might see Matt Jones get some time at center, because they were having issues running up the middle. And I wonder if that's a Luke Whippler issue, if that was just, but Thayer Munford had some issues as well, missing some blocks. So Kevin, were you thinking maybe Matt Jones would get some more time there tonight, somewhere?
I thought that they were shuffling guys around, and they certainly had the opportunity to do that. So, I don't know. I think that with a young guy like Luke Whippler, it's a confidence thing. And if you show him a lack of confidence by pulling him at that point, do you run the risk of putting more doubt in his mind? I mean, it's such a, center. I kind of see akin to golf, to putting in golf. And if you start getting the yips, it's hard to get rid of the yips. And then you have to go see the swing doctor and everything else. And that's just a real pain. So, I don't know. I can understand why they didn't. I want to make sure we get to Terry's super chat before we get to Jason's too, because we're starting to back them up, which is good. Keep hitting that super chat.
Terry Kovac, super chat, over under on OSU and MSU. And I'm wondering, do we have an over under on that yet? If you're figuring Ohio State's going to score, say, what, because Vegas kind of has to be a little conservative in terms of,
Mhm.
I
like,
mean,
say,
it's
Ohio
all
State will score
it's all about getting
38
money
to,
on either side. So
right.
yeah,
So it's like, is 65, 62 and a half, something like that. I don't, I'm
Yeah.
not great with that in terms of the
Mhm.
over under. Now, in terms of the line, are we, it's at Ohio State. So are we talking, I don't know, 14 and a half or something?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say at
It's a
least
tough
I'm
one.
gonna say at least 12. Here's the thing: Michigan State still, for everything it's doing, and Kenneth Walker, I'm a believer
Yeah.
after today. But with that being said, I'm not a believer in the Michigan State defense. People are saying, well, vis-a-vis struggled against Penn State, they're going to struggle against Michigan State. They're very different teams. They're very different teams. And I understand the concern and being down about what Ohio State's defense was able to do against Penn State. Peyton Thorne is not Sean Clifford, but Kenneth Walker is significantly better the entire running back room for Penn State right now. So it's kind of a, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But I think Ohio State is not going to see Joey Porter Jr. They're Jair Brown, the other corner with the hyphenated name, drawing a blank on it right now. They're not going to see those types of guys out there. So I think I would say 65 and a half would be kind of my guess right now. I mean, and that's just without giving it a ton of thought. That's just shooting from the hip.
Tom, I'd take the over on that. And I'm thinking it could be like a 52-34 or something like that. If Penn State is scoring 24, I mean, is Michigan State scoring
Yeah.
31? Only one more touchdown than Penn State?
Yeah, maybe, except Ohio State has typically been better against the run this year than the pass. Like the pass is where they're getting gouged. So if a team is more run heavy, and I mean Michigan State today was like, it was like every time they threw the ball, it was like, what are you doing, you dummies? Stop doing the thing that doesn't work and do the thing that works. Like, come on, what's wrong with you? I I don't know that, I think Michigan State is a better team than Penn State, but Michigan State might be a better matchup in some ways than what Penn State was for Ohio State tonight in terms of offense. I don't know that that's I don't know that that's a guarantee, and I don't think I'm going to be picking Ohio State to blow Michigan State out for sure, for certain. But that just doesn't feel like a team that is does the stuff that there are going to be teams that do the stuff that really haunts Ohio State and will create problems for Ohio State. I just don't think that Michigan State, as they're kind of presently constructed, at least as they look today against Michigan, are necessarily, they don't do all the stuff that Ohio State is like, oh no, not that. Don't, whatever you do, don't do that. Like that's not really what Michigan State is.
It's going to be interesting because I do think that ability to run, and Kenneth Walker, you can stop him and then he still scores a 40-yard touchdown on you. And it's like, but we had you. And then you still scored. And he's very, very fun to watch. Super chat from Jason Fruth. Bold prediction. Who takes it? Tom or Tony? More touchdowns next week by Martinez. Ohio State or Nebraska? Now, are these, I think these are separate questions. Tom, who takes the bold predictions next week? You or me? We don't need to talk about this week's bold predictions. I haven't looked at mine. I honestly
Okay.
don't think I gave you 5. I think I only gave you 4 1-pointers. And I'm concerned about that because that's going to hurt my chances of having 5. But
Yeah, I looked at my bold predictions partway through the game. I was like, I'm only going to get 1 this week. And then all of a sudden, because I was pretty bullish on the Ohio State offense, which during the first half that looked real bold during the first half of that game.
Wah, wah,
During the
wah,
second
wah.
during the second half of the game, we had at one point I texted you. It was like, all right, so like I need like 30 yards out of like 4 guys. It was all like very possible, and I could have hit 5. It was like, oh man. I think I ended up with 2, and I narrowly missed my 2-pointer. I needed 3 guys to be over 100 yards, and Travion Henderson did it. Jackson Smith and Jigba finished with 97, and Garrett Wilson had 82 in like the middle of the third quarter, and then didn't do anything else. That defensive holding call or whatever it was hurt me there, so narrowly missed that one. So I think I finished with 2. So this may be Tony's chance to get back and break his long losing streak.
Yes, yeah. I honestly, again, I don't know exactly what I had, so I have to run it back, because the second one I have listed here is Ohio State will rush and pass for 153 yards, and I have no idea what that means, because that would have never been allowed. So it's like sometimes I will write stuff as I'm falling asleep, and then I'll wake up and be like, I don't know what any of this is. Maybe I was dozing off.
Send it.
I was dozing off. I was probably worn out by the negotiations, and it's just like, you know what, I can't. So who takes it? More touchdowns next week by Martinez. I will. So we got to put a line to this. Like, is it Adrian Martinez like minus 2.5?
2.5 feels about right. Yeah, if we're including passing touchdowns. And boy, Adrian Martinez, like, that could be going better. That could be going a lot better. But I don't know that they have another option there. So yeah, Adrian Martinez. I mean, I know which side I would probably take on that bet. Adrian Martinez minus 2.5. But is that what you want to set the line at? Adrian minus 2.5 on Martinez touchdowns.
Well, I was
next
going to
week.
say. I mean, I think we were saying to which side is Martinez going to do that. And what happens if Cam Martinez has a pick 6?
Right. Well, Adrian Martinez minus 2.5 versus Cam Martinez. Yeah, that was the line I was. No, I mean,
or does it mean that if Martinez throws a couple pick 6s to Ohio State, that goes in Ohio State's tally? I mean, maybe I'm overthinking this stuff, but that's.
I think you can include both. Then it's probably a pick 'em.
Yeah, quite literally, yes. Yeah, no, I thought for sure that was going to be, Adrian Martinez touchdowns like minus 2.5 against Cam Martinez touchdowns, because it's like, boy, you could see one next week. The defense has been pretty good at scoring, and just saw a super chat from Jordan Kapler about that as well. So we'll talk about that.
Let me throw in the scenario. Adrian Martinez throws an interception to Cam Martinez, who takes it back to the house. That's double duty right there, because it's a touchdown, but twice for Ohio State.
What is the plural of Martinez? Is it Martini?
Martini, I would say.
How many olives?
I just don't like promoting Martinez on Martinez crime. That's not what the show is about.
I'll be quick on this one here from Tracy Cup with the super chat. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, it would have been nice to see my Dodgers playing tonight, but I probably wouldn't have watched any of it because I had this game to contend with. They had their run. It was nice. The better team won with Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta played better there. I can be with a World Series championship last year in hand. I can be magnanimous with that if I want to be. Let's just remember, Mets suck. All right, on to the next one.
No. Let's spend some time on this one, Kevin.
Okay, I love talking about the Dodgers. I don't know if the 729 people who are on board want to hear about it outside of Tracy.
They don't. You're right. Now let's move on. Next super chat. Throw that in there. And this is from Jordan Kapler. How excited were you for Jerron Cage with the scoop and score? Being a bigger guy myself, I was elated. And those are always fun. And it's fun then to see the replay as like if they get a good shot of the face while the guy is running, and you just see the smile coming across his face, even though he's like 30 yards away. The best part of the entire thing, though, was just back on the sideline when all of his teammates were fanning him and just like trying to cool him down. And yeah, you're just waiting for the replay. Like, okay, let's see, is the ball out? Is the ball out? Because we didn't really get a good look from the angle that the ball was shown. But yeah, you love to see that. Haskell Garrett had one of those earlier this season. It's a long way for a big guy to run, though.
You watch a college football sideline, or if you're on a college football sideline, like, the guys get excited for a touchdown, but like, there's nothing they get more excited for than like a big dude scoring a touchdown. Like, hey, a pick six. That's great. That's very exciting. Everyone's very happy. But if you are a 300-pound dude who is either scoops and scores or runs back a pick six or whatever, like, that is the single most exciting play that you can possibly have on a sideline, especially if if a team is up and they can have a little bit of fun with it. Like, that is what gets guys like the most hyped on the sideline, which is just, it's very funny, but also that's kind of what gets Twitter the most hyped. So I guess it's just is sort of universal. But yeah, I mean, that was like the BB Landers one in the Indiana game 2017, where didn't he run it back and then it got wiped out by like it got reversed on replay or something, or it didn't count.
He even juked a guy, and
but it didn't count. It didn't count for some reason. I think it got overturned on replay. Like, you're just holding your breath, going, "Oh, don't take this beautiful thing away from the." I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's something about the 300-pound dudes that, like, absolutely. It's like the Bartolo Colon home run. That is my favorite home run of the last 10 years, and it was like it was Bartolo Colon. Right? Have you seen Bartolo Colon? Like, yes, that's the best. So
how can you not see him?
Yeah,
exactly.
True. One of these from way back when, and we don't need to spend too much time on the refs, but these refs are really bad tonight. And that's not just us saying that. That was TV people saying that. We mentioned that earlier, that, the lack of holding, some other questionable stuff there. It's not a great night for the refs, but also, when is it? When is it a great night for the refs? And so I'm just seeing some notes on that. And yes, I think we all agree. But that's not what was the decision in this game at all. As I scroll through there, how do you?
I'll pop some. I was going to say I'll pop some from the queue up here just to keep us moving.
Yeah, Isaac McIntyre. How do you think this affects their playoff chances, Tom?
I think their playoff chances are probably largely unchanged. I think they have to win out. That is job number one. And then after that, like, it would have been the only thing that would have materially changed their playoff chances today is either they lose, which negatively impacts them, or Oregon loses, or Cincinnati loses, or Oklahoma loses. Like, other than that, like, their playoff chances kind of are what they are. They have to win out. They need to take care of business. They probably need to not win quite so close against some of these teams, because one of the real points of separation for them in Oklahoma or them in Cincinnati was that those teams were kind of farting around and winning a bunch of real close games, while Ohio State was just curb stomping people. They probably need to go back to, curb stomping people a little more than they did tonight. But overall, I don't think this materially impacted their college football playoff chances one way or the other. I mean, where do you expect them to be on Tuesday when we hear when we get to hear from the committee?
Behind Michigan State, behind Alabama, behind Georgia, behind Cincinnati. So that puts them fifth at best. And Oregon had a 23-point win over Colorado today. I'm interested to see what they do there. And really, Kevin, if they have Ohio State ahead of Oregon right at the outset, then I think it's done. Because if they have them next to each other, then they've already compared their head-to-head. And if they have Ohio State ahead of Oregon at that point, then the only way Ohio State can lose that is to look really bad in wins and Oregon look really good in wins, or Ohio State obviously lose. But I think if Ohio State starts out ahead, why would they drop out? Why would they drop behind Oregon?
Well, they sat there and they talked about it on one of the pregame shows, saying that you could do it. And I think we talked about it on our pregame show. You could either put Ohio State over Oregon now and only correct it later, or you could do it the other way around and you could put them ahead of them now by saying, well, you don't have all the data points. Ohio State hasn't played out its schedule yet, so we'll see. And then obviously we know that we've seen Ohio State in 2014 move from 6 to 4. But yeah, I mean, I tend to believe that if Ohio State's already ahead of Oregon, it should be kind of a done deal at that point. I mean, even if both teams are sitting there as conference champions, Ohio State's path is going to be significantly more difficult, in my opinion. regardless of what happens with Sparty and what happens with that team up north and everything else there, and whatever Ohio State would end up drawing out of a potential Big Ten championship game if it gets there, potentially a rematch with Minnesota. I think it's a little bit of a better road there, but I'll be really, really curious. I'll bring a lot of opinions to our Tuesday night show.
Tom, real quick, I did get a look at some of my bold predictions. I know I got defensive ends will have more sacks than the defensive tackles. A non-bullet Burke defensive back will have an interception. Cam Brown had that one. But I think that might be it. I'll have to listen to the show to find out exactly how I did.
Our first tie.
That means we have to share the cot.
No,
we have to share the cot.
This is your 1992 Michigan game. Tony, you didn't lose to me. It is the greatest win. One of the greatest days in Tony Gerdeman history. Wow.
Somebody get Gordon Gee on the phone right now, and he will present you with the commemorative shared cot.
Ohio State at Nebraska, a nooner next week. How exciting!
How exciting indeed! I was going to look to see what other games are next week, but we've got all week to talk about that. I'm just the two-person cot just does not sit well with me. DK Super Chat, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm all like I just want to go home, except I already am home. Yeah, Neil Harris. Good thing the Buckeyes didn't go to OT, didn't have a play in the red zone. I think that's valid. Where do they just want to go straight to the 2-point conversions? Like, let's just vote. We don't need to go from the 25, and I'm sure James Franklin probably would have agreed as well. But yeah, when you're bogged down in the red zone, the last thing you want is the OT. But we've seen in the past with, like, was that Michigan in 2016 where Ohio State would bog down in the red zone, then they get into overtime and it's like, boom, JT Barrett 25-yard run or whatever. 2 plays later, on the double overtime or whatever. So sometimes things can change the situation up, and you'll just get some plays that you weren't necessarily expecting.
Yes, the 2016 Ohio State-Michigan game where overtime, everything was really easy for Ohio State.
Nothing controversial. 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Sam Maloney. Penn State's defensive scheme will be replicated by future opponents. I trust Day to make adjustments. And I think we saw some adjustments there in the second half because the yards picked up. And that's one thing that Ohio State, I think Day and Kevin Wilson are very good at. But it was just an odd offensive day, no pun intended. And I wonder when Day is asked about his performance in this, maybe by Thursday, because I'm sure there's not going to be much. I don't know how much he'll share on Tuesday, but how does he grade himself and Kevin Wilson? And really, I wonder how much they were just impacted. Obviously, they were impacted by Penn State's play, but how much did that steer their play calling, and was it almost unnecessary impacting Kevin?
I kind of got caught up by putting some stuff on the message board, so I kind of zoned out there. I'm sorry,
That's
Tony.
fine.
It happens sometimes.
Answer John Hall's question. Why didn't they use Ruckert in the red zone?
I don't know. I don't know why they didn't use Ruckert. I mean, tight ends had 4? I don't know anything. They had 4 receptions. Ruckert had 3 of them. You get bogged down in there. They just did a good job of getting into Stroud's head. They just created a lot of disruption, and they just didn't have time for a lot of things to develop. And that's about the best thing I can say at this point. The best worst thing that they never really had a chance for anybody for that to happen. You couldn't sit there and have the tight end attached and have him sit there and, oh, I'm blocking, oh, I'm releasing at this point, and be able to hit him there. I don't think that Ryan Day suddenly forgot how to call an offense. I think Penn State did a lot of things that Ohio State just, I don't know if I want to say wasn't prepared for, because I don't buy that. I don't buy what's a bear front? What's a zero? I've never seen this stuff before. I don't buy that, but I certainly think that there were some things that they weren't necessarily well prepared for in terms of that they schemed it up. And I don't know why they didn't use Ruckert more there, but I don't know why they sat there and just ran what looked like the same play, from the top down over and over and over again with Henderson when there were a lot of other opportunities there. I don't know why that they had times that they needed to pick up 8-9 yards and they were running screens that were just ineffective the entire night. So I'm not sure.
I want to get Tony. I want to get your reaction to a quote. I thought this was very interesting from Ryan Day's postgame. Defense won this game, in my opinion. If our defense can play like they did tonight, we've got a chance to be really good. Are you surprised by that reaction?
I think, yeah, a little. But again, I go back to the yards per play. And if you can do that, but you have to get off the field on third down. And the reason you weren't was because of the coverage, the intermediate coverage over the middle of the field. And if that was the issue earlier in the season as well. And so if that is still an issue, it's going to come into play against Michigan State. It's going to come into play against Michigan. It'll come into play against Purdue. Now, just as Ohio State did in this game, they should be able to overcome all of that. But I know we all came into this game expecting a double-digit win, and now, like we were talking before recently, like, no, Ohio State's not going to beat all of their opponents by 28 points the rest of the way out, but they could. But they will beat them by double digits. Now they haven't. And so I think there's two different aspects to that defense. Yes, if they hold teams to 4.9 yards per play, that's great. But Tom, there's other aspects to that if you are turning the ball over and giving teams short fields, 4.9 yards is a very different thing going 30 yards than it is going 80 yards.
Well, 4.9 yards per carry means you're putting teams in a position where they have to constantly execute on third down to keep drives alive because you're not giving up big plays. So you're forcing teams to be methodical and drive down the field. So they've really got to execute on third down. It's like, what a great game plan. But then if a team executes on third down and they go 11 for 18 on third down, like, well, that's not such a good game after all. You're getting into the part of the season where there are no more Indianas on the schedule. There's no more Rutgers. There's no more Marylands on the schedule. Like now these teams are getting better. You're going to have to be a little bit more actively involved in getting them off the field. They're not necessarily going to get themselves off the field every week. Here's another interesting note from the post game. CJ Stroud quote, "I feel like we're the best offense in the country. We just kept fighting." But here's the interesting part. He said Penn State's defense was calling out some of Ohio State's offensive plays. So is that, was Ohio State too predictable? And this is one of the things that I'm looking forward to talking to Ross Fulton about a little later on this week on the morning show, because you don't necessarily, without really like going back and watching, you don't necessarily notice tendencies, stuff like that. But maybe that's part of it as well. Because I was texting with Ross a little bit during the game, and I said, "Is this Penn State doing something weird that I'm not seeing, or is it just Ohio State's offensive line just not getting a push?" And he said, there was a little bit of weirdness at the beginning, but some of it is just they're just not getting a push. Like that's just so. Some of it may have some sort of extenuating circumstances that might explain some of it, but some of it was also just like, yeah, you just weren't as good as you needed to be tonight.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's one of those things that you tend to clean up in a bye week, or you try to clean up in a bye week, the tendencies and things like that. But while we're all watching the game, it's just run up the middle, run up the middle, run up the middle. And so, yeah, there seem to be tendencies throughout there. Dale Reineke, explain how recruits watch the game differently. Serious question. Kevin, go ahead.
I was going to say, because I think it may have been Dale, it may have been somebody else saying something along the lines of, the recruits had to be bored by the second quarter. These recruits are watching the game. Sure, they're watching the game to watch the game, but they're also watching the game to sit there and see, what is Ohio State running? What do things look like? I mean, how will I fit in here? I mean, in terms of covering recruiting, we hear this line all the time, and there's a lot of truth to it. There's a point where you stop being a fan and you start trying to make a business decision as to where it is you want to go. So, yes, you can ply them with all the pizza and balloons and everything else you want to, but they ultimately have to make a decision where they're going to make that 3 to 5 year. And, we also hear the saying, oh, it's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. All the recruiting mantras that are out there. I mean, they're watching the game a lot differently in their section than Jim or John or Joe is, sitting in 6A, how they're watching the game. I mean, obviously you're on a visit, you want to sit there and see the team that you're there to visit do well, but you also want to get an idea of how do I fit in? If you're CJ Hicks, hey, I know I'm going to be able to come in here and get in the mix pretty much immediately at linebacker. Hey, if I'm Carnell Tate, the wide receiver, I see what they do with Olave, Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. I have an idea of the things that they'd like to do there. I mean, and obviously you need to tailor some things to the guys that you have on your roster, but that's how you're watching it differently. You're not watching it going, well, I'm just not happy with how this is going in terms of, just the flow of the game. You're watching it from a much more different point of view, and that was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, you're also watching the position that you're going to play. How do they get used? You're probably watching some interaction on the sideline as well. And then I think close games help. You get to see the full force and the full brunt of the atmosphere. And I have to imagine this is going to be a good visit for a lot of guys. And they saw plenty of passing. They saw, for the offensive guys, the receivers, they saw plenty of passing. Any running backs there? Richard Young was there. They saw the reliance on Travion Henderson, 28 carries. Offensive line there, they see the need for what happens when the offensive line isn't gelling. So I think this is a good visit for a lot of guys. And then defensively, they saw places where I could fit in. I see Denzel Burke starting. I see Steele Chambers as a linebacker for about 6 months. I see opportunities to come in and play right away. I see a thin linebacking core, and I think there's opportunities. And so, yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty good visit, and it's certainly better than the Oregon official visiting spree.
Yeah, I mean, and you go back through some of the more successful recruiting visit weekends in Ohio State history. There were a bunch of recruits there for the Virginia Tech game in 2014. Mm-hmm. That was a very big recruiting weekend, and it worked out just fine. I mean, it was, just because you lose one game or win one game, that doesn't necessarily, sway people. That's one of Bill Green, the great Bill Green, who's on our staff. He has, his recruiting rules manifesto that he updates every year or so, and that's one of them that's been on there for quite a while. Is like, one game does not sway recruits. No. There are rare exceptions, like Zach Harrison after the 2018 Ohio State Michigan game, where it was like, maybe I'd rather be the hammer than the nail. But there, for the most part, like, one loss, if you lose, you can spin that as, see, we need you, and if you win, it's, see, it's fun to come here and play. And the point that Tony made there was a really significant one. Look, we are not going to make you sit. If you are good enough, you are going to play. If you are Denzel Burke good, you will play. If you are Travion Henderson good, you will play. And here's a little secret about high school football players who are getting recruited by Ohio State. They all think they're that good. So that means they all think they have an opportunity to play. So that's going to be a big selling point for them. And, the atmosphere looked great tonight. It was, that stadium, and for a noon game against a MAC team is one way. And for that stadium, when a primetime game, middle of the season, when the team's rolling and they have the atmosphere and they do the scarlet out and all that kind of stuff, like, that is a very different atmosphere. That was a cool atmosphere. That looked like a cool atmosphere tonight. I would guess that it's probably pretty fun in Columbus right now. That if you are hanging out on campus, you are probably having a fairly good time. So, that is something that I think, this for a big recruiting weekend, I think that's, yes, it could have been a more dominating game, but I don't think that is any, I don't think there's anything about that evening that is going to hurt them in terms of recruiting and all the guys that are in town for it.
Before we get to the super chat, let's address this tweet from CJ Hicks. Great game with a couple of booms on the way. Now, are these booms similar to the booms in East Lansing, say like a couch on fire or an overturned car as we saw today, or are these, or do we assume these are recruiting booms, Kevin?
I don't think they're sonic booms. I don't think they're any of those. I think that they're recruiting booms. Um, let's see. Let's see what kind of happens. CJ Hicks, Captain Buckeye, as he's known as, he's got a good pulse on there. But I also know this: recruits on visits like this love what's going on. They love what's going on. Hey, buddy, I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm going to be there with you. What happens on his next visit? Hey, buddy, I love this. I'm going to be there with you. So let's see what happens. Let's let everybody slow their roll. The worst thing that happens, and I won't say the worst thing because that's probably not the right terminology, but you get these emotional visit commitments. I'm totally jazzed. I'm in, especially when you're looking at a year down the line, 2 years down the line. So in this case, class of 2023, then you have to play defense for 14 months on these guys. Somebody who made an emotional decision, maybe didn't think everything through, hadn't figured out everything. Maybe somebody who's from 800 miles away who didn't realize, oh, Ohio's kind of far, or from 1,200 miles away, it's like, oh, Ohio's kind of cold. You need to kind of get through that work. But when CJ Hicks goes to Twitter to say that, I'm generally buying.
Yeah. All right. You want to throw the one super chat up there now from Philip, and Philip, for the super chat, I should be at least able to pronounce your last name correctly. So if I don't, I'm going to pronounce it as an Ohioan. I'll say Pouliot rather than Paris, France, and say Pouliot. Tom, I see you shaking your head.
You're multilingual.
Yes.
I'm going to Northwest Ohio is not actually a language. I'm going to go Pouliot. I think Pouliot was the correct answer. But yeah, he says, I think we weren't all expecting Clifford to be able to play the role he played tonight. And yeah, I mean, that caught me by surprise. There was a bunch of stuff that James Franklin said earlier in the week that we all kind of went, huh? And much of it was not true. Ohio Stadium, still not the big house. They did not play Illinois tonight, but he said Sean Clifford was 100% or going to be 100%. And I'm quite certain he was not in fact 100%. But whatever they did to get him ready for the game, whether it was his mom with the yoga mat or the some sort of medical assistance or the 3D printed rib pads that Holly Rowe talked about on the sidelines, whatever it worked. Like he looked comfortable throwing the ball in a way he just did not a week ago. He looked very much comfortable running the ball when he needed to run the ball. Like that was just stuff he just was not doing last week. And, I think if you go back through our game predictions are predicated on he looks something like he did against Illinois, and he did not look at all like he did against Illinois.
No.
And then if you can drive the ball downfield like he did tonight, well, that, he wasn't throwing it way downfield. I don't know that he could have thrown it way downfield, but, driving the ball 15, 20 yards downfield on a little bit of a line, he threw it over some people. There was one where Cody Simon looked like he was going to maybe tip it or maybe intercept it, and he got it over Cody Simon. He was able to make the throws he needed to make that a close game. So yeah, I think you kind of have to tip your hat to Sean Clifford because he played a pretty gutty performance. That's one that if Penn State won, that's one of those, the Michael Jordan flu game where you've overcome so much and you're playing with broken ribs or whatever it is like that. That was an impressive performance from Clifford.
Yeah, and it's still, he did throw one bad interception, probably could have thrown a couple of more, and also fumbled. And it's like, yes, he played very well, but he still was Sean Clifford. And this is a very good version of it, but there are still enough mistakes to take advantage of, and that helped Ohio State out quite a bit. Super chat from Jordan Kapler. This may be controversial, but I'm glad to see OSU struggle now in a bigger game that isn't in the postseason. Gives me hope it will be corrected. Kevin, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, you always want to face some adversity, but you want to come out the other end with the dub. So they faced some adversity here after 4 games of where they were able to name the score and really didn't have to play much of their playbook or their starters that deep, or if they didn't want to. So get through this, learn how to win. That's the thing with a young team. You have to teach a young team how to win these types of games. And while Ohio State didn't fall behind in this game, it almost did when I keep wanting to call John Lovett John Lovitz, which is not right, but when John Lovett went out of bounds and then came back in bounds and took one 70 yards to the house. You were sitting 30 all point pending at that point. But, Ohio State faced some adversity. Everything didn't necessarily work according to plan, and they came out the other end with the win. So I think that's important when you sit there and you look at a schedule that still has Michigan and Michigan State. And, maybe I'm not going to give enough credit to Purdue or Nebraska, but, they're kind of there. But, I think it's important. I agree with Jordan, and, it may not be the most accepted thing out there, but I mean, as somebody who really enjoys the psychology behind sports, I think that there's something to it.
Well, and how many? It's rare for a championship team to go through a season without a game like this, and I don't even think a game like this is quote unquote a game like this. There are much worse wins that championship teams have had on their than what this was. This was a win over a team that has two close losses because their quarterback was hurt. If their quarterback doesn't get hurt against Iowa, they win. If Sean Clifford is healthy against Illinois, they probably are able to avoid the overtime session there. And if they can't, they probably actually end up scoring more in overtime. So you have a team that loses two games because of an injured quarterback. The quarterback is as healthy as he's been in a while against Ohio State. And this looks like a pretty good team, the Penn State team. Now, they still can't run it. So there's limitations there. But I think we saw a better Penn State team than we've seen since maybe like the first half of the Iowa game. So let's see. The super chat from Matthew Witham. Can we talk about the worst missed holding call in football history? Well, Tom, I need Matthew to be more specific.
Much more.
Because
there were 3 in a row.
It was really, really bad. Was it Steele Chambers getting tackled once or Tommy Eichenberg? Like these were bear hugs. Like this is like a reunion. Oh, I haven't seen you in forever. Come here. And
then Lathan Ransom got tackled coming in, and then everybody told me there was a third one, but I think I was too busy being angry at Twitter, being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this!" that I missed a third one. I mean, it was. I don't know how this crew got the A game. I mean, maybe Michigan State was the A game, and I mean, if this is the B crew, then Bill Carollo needs to kind of check some things out because this crew. I mean, and everybody's trying to focus on one official, and that's not fair because there were a lot of issues out there. It doesn't fall all on one, so but. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of my favorite tweets every basketball season is that college football would be a much more watchable product if bad officiating didn't ruin literally every game. And college football is not to that point, not even close to that point yet, just because officials don't dictate the flow of the game in the way basketball officials do. But yeah, I mean, this was not the game where the Michigan fans dox all the officials and realize that 3 of the 8 guys are from Ohio, and therefore this is a massive conspiracy involving the Masons and the Lizard people and the 3 people from Ohio who all secretly one of them patted Mike Weber on the back, and therefore it means they were all in on it. And this was just a poorly officiated game. This was not they had it in for one team. This was just like a poorly officiated game. You don't normally see a poorly officiated game that isn't like they have lost control of the game. Like this was just like, oh no, they never seemed to. They were just a bunch of like, oh, that was just not a bunch of very obvious missed calls on both sides. And I mean, we talked earlier about the ball that got run back, like that CJ Stroud had to run Jesse Luketa down 80 yards downfield, like. I am all for, like, if you're not sure, don't blow the whistle. Like, I'm all for that. That was, like, the most obvious, like, from the, the camera in the press box, the high angle ABC camera, that was extremely obvious that ball just hit Travion Henderson in the hands and dropped. Like, there was not even a question that was oh, did he have possession? Like, that was extraordinarily obvious that he did not have possession. So it just looked like a crew that was just not having a good night.
But out of fairness, Tom, the ball only bounced on the ground twice. So you
Mm-hmm.
don't really know if it's a loose ball or an incompletion until that third bounce. That's when
Mm-hmm.
things really settle in, and that's when it clicks in your brain, okay, this might be an incompletion. But still, to be safe, let's let replay take a look, and we'll just let this run back
Did it come
go.
to it bounced twice, but then did it come to a stop at that point? I mean, because it seriously. I mean, we could have heard the echo of the whistle at that point if they would have blown it. It was ridiculous.
And I see Nick M talking about the refs. There's no blaming of the refs. I mean, Ohio State won, so what do you? I mean, there were some bad calls, but again, it didn't cost Ohio State the game. The question here from Rightful One, which is something we have talked about and also don't have an answer for. Why keep running Henderson on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1? Mayan was literally on the bench. Also, why keep forcing up the middle when he clearly kept getting stopped? So frustrating. I don't know that things were any better for Mayan Williams. Now, he only carried the ball, 3 times in the game, 3 for 5 yards. So, yeah, I agree. It would have been interesting to see some more outside stuff. That's where I think Travion is more at home. Not that he can't do the inside stuff, because he can, but it was just so congested. And it was interesting to see it be so congested against an Ohio State offense that can throw the ball. And so, yeah, I guess if teams want to follow that blueprint, you better have some corners. And we saw Joey Porter Jr., who's a very good corner, get flagged for a couple of holds. And so it's not all that easy. And then the touchdown to Chris Olave, when you have that kind of pass protection and Thayer Munford is out on an island trying to keep CJ Stroud free, and it's a long route, and they dial that up, and you can get that much time for Stroud, and just pretty impressive there, but not overall not a great day for that offensive line. And I don't know why they keep running up the middle. They're trying to prove something, trying to do something. Ryan Day likes to have his team be tough, and maybe he's trying to send a message, but the message kept coming back undeliverable in that first half.
Yeah, and I did wonder. The question was about Mayan Williams. Was this a game where you would have had benefited from Master Teague if Master Teague had been available? That he is your tough short yardage back, because Williams is a little bit more of a bounce outside kind of guy. Travion Henderson is, you've seen he can do a little bit of everything, but Teague seems like if you had to have one guy to just ram it straight between the guards, like maybe he's the guy. He wasn't able to play tonight, so that may have hurt them a little bit. But yeah, that does not answer the running inside versus running outside. It just all night it was just like you were just waiting for the play action to the running back and give it to the wide receiver on a little fly sweep or an end around or whatever, and it never happened. It was like, they were very clearly sucked in to stop the interior run. Like, just go around them. Why don't you go where they aren't?
I came into this game and I said it a couple times, but that Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson were better suited because they would be able to get through that first line. And I guess I was wrong about that, because Master Teague, you want, Ryan Day wants those 2-yarders to be turned into 5-yarders, but they could have used some 3-yarders. And I think that's what Master Teague would have gotten you. Mm-hmm. And that would have been a welcome addition in this offense if they would have actually used him, because I think they didn't use Mayan Williams much. And I think one of those times was because Travion Henderson had to leave the field. And that seems to be where most of Mayan Williams' playing time is actually coming from this year. It's when Travion Henderson has to leave the field. Did I hear a super chat?
You did. I wanted to get to this question here. I promise Ryan on the super chat will hit you next. I put this Joe Anthony question up 2 or 3 times. I want to get to it. Or statement, really.
Yeah, blowing out teams, Joel Anthony. Blowing out teams every week is not realistic. They beat a talented team by 9, and that's absolutely correct. And, beating your entire schedule by double digits is very, very rare. It happens once or twice a decade, maybe. And it's usually it's going to be the national championship winning team that does that. And so to, a 9-point win over a good team at home in conference play at the end of October. No reason to apologize for any of that. And so you walk away happy because you didn't lose, and that's conference play in a nutshell.
And you go back 2 years. I think the last Ohio State team to make it through the whole regular season without without having a single digit win or a loss was the 2019 team, and they had an 11-point win against Penn State. So it's congratulations, they won by 2 more points. But it was kind of the same game where it was like, it was just kind of frustrating, I'm sure, for Ohio State fans for a good bit of that game. And it was like, why is this offense not capable of doing anything today for some reason? And Penn State wasn't really fantastic. You could tell Penn State's offense didn't have the firepower that Ohio State's did that day, but they kept it close. And I think that ended up 21-10 or something like that. And, this is, you don't want to be too reductionist and just say a win is a win, but also kind of a win is a win. Now this, I think you saw a bunch of things that are potentially a concern moving forward in terms of college football playoff. And so if it looks like this against Penn State, what will it look like against Georgia's defensive line? Like, I think that's a fair concern to have right now if you're an Ohio State fan. But in terms of just on to the next one, and winning the Big Ten East and potentially winning the Big Ten, and then whether you go to the college football playoff or you go to the Rose Bowl or whatever, like the things that normie college football programs would consider a wildly successful season, that Ohio State fans would, I'm sure, be bitterly disappointed with. Like, oh man, can you imagine that they missed the playoff and they had to go to the Rose Bowl as the Big Ten champion? Like, what a disappointing season. Like, horrible. In terms of what, the stuff that 125 programs in the nation would absolutely kill for, like that was a very good, very, that's a big win that moves you a lot closer to all of those goals.
Yeah, it's a win that every team on track for a championship has to deal with at some point. Super chat from Ryan Koji. Hopefully I got that name right. Ryan, it's a tough one for me. Why keep running the zone read when the read part isn't actionable, trying to spring a trap on a future foe who's already preparing for the zone read? And this is, almost a question as old as time at this point. Like, and we talked about it earlier in the show. You have to keep it a couple of times just to make the handoffs look like reads. Right now, they're not reads, and you're just allowing the defensive line to just simply crash and attack the running game, the running back. And if there's no pass option out of that and it's just a straight run, you're kind of not doing yourself you're doing yourself a disservice. But it's just that's just the way it is. Like, I don't know why it is, but that's just how you run the ball out of the shotgun or out of the pistol. It looks like a read option. And if you're not going to threaten them with the option part, then it's just a handoff, and you're just leaving it out there for everybody to see. It's like, come and get it. You just ring in the dinner bell. And if you never pull the plate back from everybody coming for the vittles, then you're just going to be stopped short quite a bit. So yeah, we talked about it earlier in the show. We would all like to see just a couple of keeps, just to keep everybody honest. And I don't know how honest it will keep them, but it will at least put it in the back of their mind, and it may slow somebody down just enough for one of these Ohio State running backs.
Another good super chat from FDR is great. What conditions does it take to call offensive holding in college football? Penn State was holding all day long. We talked about this earlier, but I will just say, thanks to the super chat, we've now made more money on the refs not calling holding than the refs did tonight. Hey, sorry, trying to delete it. Sorry. Just a joke.
We could talk about that some more, but I don't know what else we could say. It was bad. There was some, as close to tackling as there could be. And I should check the box score. Did any of the offensive linemen for Penn State get credited with tackles? If not, they probably should have been. And so, yeah, that's what it was. And everybody saw it, and only the haters would deny it.
Stop blaming the refs. We're not blaming the refs. We're just pointing out what happened. Didn't change the outcome of the game. I mean, Ohio State still won the game, but it's not. I mean, it happened. It happened,
Well,
and that's all we're saying.
It's like when I'm in school and when I was in school and I'd bring home a C. Stop blaming me for getting a C. It's like, but that's the result. That was the
I heard
result
it
of.
was more like they celebrated when you got a C. I heard you weren't a very good student.
Just depends on the subject. Math or reading. I'm much better at reading words than reading numbers. But yeah, refs were terrible. Matt Strathis. I mean, that's an evergreen post. I mean, that will never go out of style. Yakov 22. Michigan is 7-1, Tom, but feels a bit empty.
Yeah, it felt like that was a lot of stuff that we kind of have been talking about as like this is going to catch up with them at some point, and it all caught up with them on one day in East Lansing, which is not the day they probably would have chosen to have it catch up with them because they're up by what 16 at one point. Yeah, they're up by 16 at one point, and you could just see like, oh boy, this is going to be a win that everything is right in the world again. We've righted the ship, and you've beaten Michigan State. You've set things, little brother is little brother again. And then, then the roof fell in.
Expired there, mentioning Steel Chambers.
Yeah, I didn't mean to take that one off. I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, now I can't read it because it's gone. Defense took a hit when Steele got ejected, but good job holding on. I mentioned at the outset of the show, Ohio State gave up 3 points when Steel Chambers was in the game. They gave up 21 when he was out of the game. Now, the first drive Penn State scored, Steel Chambers wasn't in the game. He started the second half, and I wonder, and I don't know how often he started the second half this year. Maybe I've just missed it, and maybe it's just the alternating possessions now it's Steel Chambers' turn. But it sure feels like it might be just time to give him a couple of more series than Taraja Mitchell. And I'm also feeling like it's time to keep Tommy Eichenberg out there maybe a little bit more. It seems like those are the two better linebackers right now than Cody Simon and Taraja Mitchell. And at this point, whenever Steel Chambers is not on the field, it feels like you're not putting your best defense out there. And after seeing what happened to Penn State or against Penn State, the Buckeyes need to put more of their best defense out on the field. They won't be able to do that in the first half against Nebraska because Steel Chambers won't be playing. But he should play most of that second half unless it's a complete blowout. But I've been okay with this rotation. I think it's been working. But it might be time to just hand over the reins to Steel Chambers and say, Taraja, we appreciate what you're doing. There is still a role for you. But right now, Steel Chambers is our starting will linebacker.
That feels like a more high variance result where you're going to get probably more positive plays, but you're also going to have some more negative plays just from guy is literally still learning how to play the position. Like he only moved over the summer. You're going to have stuff where Taraja Mitchell is probably going to recognize and diagnose stuff just because he's seen it for 4 years. He's probably going to recognize and diagnose stuff a little quicker than Steel Chambers. But what Ryan Day said about Steel Chambers in the past is he does everything fast. He just reacts. He just goes. Like it's just it's not that, and it might have been Kerry Combs who said that, but it's just that he doesn't, it's not like look, think, figure it out, go. It's just go. Like he just goes. And sometimes when you're newer at the position, that you're going to go and you're going to be in the wrong spot. You're going to be not doing, your eyes are going to have deceived you, or you're not going to be, you're not going to be diagnosing what's happening correctly. And then you get yourself out of position or whatever. But also sometimes that's going to mean you're in the backfield real early and you're making plays, which this is, with as much as the defense has struggled to get consistent pressure on the quarterback, if he can get in there quickly and he can make a difference as a pass rusher, or he can make a difference as a run stopper, like, I mean, it feels like you're not getting like incredible performance out of the linebackers on the whole right now. So if you've got a guy who maybe has a higher ceiling and can maybe be more of a difference maker for you later in the season when you're playing even better opponents, it's probably worth at least exploring.
I feel like we might want to start wrapping up, but I also look at the numbers and I want 800 people.
I know. I mean, I can get people to. I can get people to hit the thumbs up. I don't know if I can get people to suddenly just get on the show.
Wake up your family. Tell them, it's only
have
one
get
in the
on
morning.
another device. I mean, there you go. Or you get on 2 devices.
I'm not even watching the show. I could have increased our numbers. I do like this one from Chalky White 231. People are calling for more Master Teague carries now. Wow, this fan base. And I think when you have as much talent as Ohio State does, and you're not able to do something, try somebody else. Try somebody who is better at that. And you have all of these players and pieces so that you can fit them in their specific areas of best usage. And yeah, I agree that this is probably the best area, the best time to use Master Teague, but unfortunately he's injured, and I think his time will come. It's just me, Tim 79. Most fell asleep and they didn't even realize they were still on. It's like when I leave the TV on, there's no sleep timer on YouTube, suckers. So just soak in the greatness of this show. Kevin is about ready to go to sleep. So
I was going to say we have more stuff to record after this. So
crap, you guys too. I don't. So yes, okay. Let's go ahead and wrap up then. Unless Tom, did you want to keep going?
Unless we get any more super chats, we always stick around for super chats.
I need one of you guys to be awake because we got to record the morning scoop after this. So
it's my turn. I'll do it. The cat's freaking out in the room right now.
Razmataz says Tom and Kevin don't have Tony's stamina. So that's a good one to end the show on. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully it took your mind off of such a rough game. An Ohio State win over Penn State. A lot to talk about, and thank you guys for tuning in to help us talk about it and give us questions, interact with us. We always do enjoy it. And so that will do it for now. As always, you can find us at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. If you're here right now, go ahead and hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified when we go live next time. So thank you all, and we will talk to you later.